On death row, time isn't measured in hours or minutes. It's measured in heartbeats. Michael Mike Harlow sat on the cold steel bunk, his wrists shackled, eyes hollow from years of appeals denied. Guards whispered outside his cell about the execution scheduled at dawn. But Mike's last request wasn't for a cigarette, or a priest, or even his favorite meal. No, his final wish was far more human, far more devastating. "I just want to see Rex, my dog," he told them, his voice hoarse but steady. The German Shepherd had been his companion, his shadow, his best friend before the nightmare of accusation swallowed him. The warden scoffed at the idea. Bringing a dog into a prison was absurd. Yet the man's eyes burned with something unshakable: love. And in that moment, a question hung heavy. Would the system deny even a dying man his dog? Mike shuffled to the narrow window slit in his cell. Beyond the bars, only a streak of pale sky showed. That glimpse of dawn clawed at his memory, the same hour when he used to walk Rex through quiet Redwood City streets. He could almost hear the eager tug of the leash, the joyful bark echoing against the morning air. Rex had been more than a pet. He was Mike's anchor, the one creature who never judged him, never doubted him. Now, chained by heavy iron, Mike's fingers brushed the cuffs like a cruel reminder of how far life had fallen. He whispered into the silence, "Does he even remember me?" In his heart, though, he knew. Dogs never forget the ones they love. Rex's face haunted him, more vivid than the prison walls closing in. And that love was the only thing keeping Mike from breaking. Warden Margaret Maggie Owens stood outside Mike's cell, arms crossed. She had presided over countless last requests, meals, letters, prayers, but this one unsettled her. A dog? In the most secure wing of Ironwood Prison? Policy screamed no. Yet something in Mike's trembling tone lingered. She cleared her throat. "Jackson, final requests are subject to approval. Don't get your hopes up." She turned briskly, but not before Mike caught the flicker of hesitation in her eyes. Owens was known for her iron posture, her zero tolerance for sentiment. But even steel bends under enough weight. As she walked away, a guard leaned in. "Ma'am, the department won't allow it. Too risky." Owens didn't answer. For the first time in years, she felt a crack in the armor of procedure. Somewhere deep inside, Maggie Owens knew. Denying a man the last sight of his dog felt colder than the injection itself. Across town, Claire Donovan hadn't slept a wink. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at Rex, curled tightly on his dog bed. The German Shepherd lifted his head at the sound of her sob, ears pricking, tail thumping softly. Claire stroked his fur, her whisper breaking. "We're going to see him, boy, maybe for the last time." Rex tilted his head, sensing the grief, pressing his muzzle into her palm. For years, Claire had carried the unbearable weight of Mike's conviction. An engagement ring tucked away, wedding invitations abandoned, dreams shattered. Yet she had never let go of Rex, because he was the last living piece of Mike she could hold on to. Now, with time slipping, she clipped the leash to Rex's collar. His tail wagged, oblivious to the pain of humans. Claire forced a smile, but inside, her heart was bleeding raw.
The engine roared as Claire's truck cut through the morning haze. Rex sat in the back seat, his nose pressed against the glass, ears twitching at every passing sound. Claire gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, every traffic light a dagger to her chest. She knew the truth. If she arrived late, Mike would die without Rex's touch. "Please hold on, Mike," she whispered, her voice cracking. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Friends, lawyers, reporters, she ignored them all. The only voice that mattered was the one she might never hear again. In the rearview mirror, Rex let out a low whine, as if sensing the weight pressing on her soul. Outside, the city slowly gave way to the gray walls of Ironwood Prison. Barbed wire glinted like the edge of a blade. Claire's chest tightened. She was driving not just toward Mike, but toward a possible last goodbye. Inside Ironwood, time ticked louder than any clock. Mike sat in a sterile holding cell, staring at the brown paper bag delivered to him. His last meal, a cheeseburger with extra pickles and a soda, chosen not out of hunger, but memory. He could almost see Claire laughing beside him in that diner 5 years ago, Rex curled at their feet. Now, the smell of grease and pickles only made his stomach churn. He pushed it aside. A guard checked his watch. 30 minutes, Harlow, then we move you. Mike nodded numbly. His body had accepted the weight of chains long ago, but his mind clung to one fragile thread, the hope of Rex's arrival. Every second was a hammer pounding toward the needle, and with each strike, Mike's heart whispered one desperate prayer: "Let me see my dog before I die."
The door creaked open, and Chaplain Henry Hank Wallace stepped inside. His voice was soft, his presence a balm against the sterile terror of the chamber. "Michael, would you like to pray?" Mike shook his head, eyes glassy. "I don't fear death, Reverend. I can't leave this world without seeing him." Wallace nodded slowly, sitting on the edge of the bunk. "Sometimes God's mercy arrives in ways we don't expect. Hold on to faith." Mike stared at the ceiling, chains rattling faintly. He wasn't sure if faith lived inside him anymore. He had shouted his innocence for 5 years, ignored by courts, crushed by prosecutors. But the thought of Rex's pause, the sound of his bark, that was faith enough. Wallace folded his hands and prayed softly, while Mike closed his eyes and whispered, "Don't let them take him from me." Beyond the prison gates, chaos unfolded. Protesters waved signs, their chants clashing in a storm of voices. "Justice for the victim!" some shouted, spitting venom at Mike's name. Others raised banners, "End the death penalty!" The air pulsed with anger, fear, and raw emotion. News cameras swarmed, reporters shouting into microphones. Inside, the sound reached Mike's ears as faint echoes. He smiled bitterly. The world outside debated his life like it was a sport, but none of them had ever walked with Rex, laughed with Claire, or lived his truth. To them, he was guilty or innocent. To him, he was just a man who wanted his dog. The protests didn't matter. The cameras didn't matter. In a world of divided voices, Mike's last wish was heartbreakingly simple: to be remembered not as a prisoner, but as the man Rex had once loved.
Claire's phone buzzed sharply against the dashboard. Hands trembling, she answered. "Miss Donovan? This is Warden Owens. Listen carefully. We've received conditional approval. You and the dog must be here within 90 minutes. No exceptions." Claire's breath caught. "We'll be there." She slammed the phone shut, Rex barking in response to her rising energy. Her foot pressed harder on the gas. 90 minutes. A lifetime, and yet nothing at all. She pictured Mike sitting alone in his cell, staring at the wall, wondering if this miracle would come true. She looked in the rearview mirror, Rex's bright eyes locked onto hers, tail swishing, ears alert. He didn't know the stakes, but he felt the urgency in her heartbeat. Claire whispered, "We're coming, Mike. Just hold on. Don't you give up." Every mile closed in on Ironwood, like a countdown to fate. Ironwood Prison loomed like a fortress carved from stone, its fences coiled with barbed wire that glittered under the rising sun. Claire's truck rolled to a stop at the first checkpoint. A guard approached, skeptical eyes flicking between her and Rex. "State your purpose." Claire's voice cracked but didn't waver. "Final request. For Michael Harlow. I have his dog." The guard frowned, flipping through his clipboard. Rex pressed his muzzle against the window, letting out a sharp bark that startled everyone. The sound was raw, desperate, as if even he knew the urgency. Finally, the guard waved them through. 2 gates opened, closing behind them like jaws. Claire's hands trembled as she parked. She reached back, stroking Rex's fur.
"We made it, boy. Just a little longer." Beyond the walls, Mike waited. Inside this place of death, the most human reunion was about to unfold.
The heavy steel door clanged open. Guards stood at rigid attention as Warden Maggie Owens stepped aside. Behind her, Claire appeared, holding Rex's leash. The German Shepherd froze in the doorway, eyes scanning the sterile white room. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Mike rose shakily from the bunk, his chains clinking, his breath caught in his throat, eyes widening. 5 years of distance collapsed in that silent second. "Rax?" he whispered, barely audible. The dog's ears shot up, muscles stiffened, and his tail gave a sharp twitch. The air crackled with tension. A guard reached instinctively for Rex's collar, but Owens raised her hand. "Let him choose," she said softly. The silence broke in an explosion of sound. Rex barked once, a piercing cry of recognition, and then lunged forward with unstoppable force toward the man he never forgot. Rex bounded across the cold tile floor, nails clicking frantically. Mike dropped to his knees, the chains rattling, arms outstretched. The German Shepherd launched into him with a joyous thud, tail whipping, body trembling in ecstatic energy. He barked again, half yelp, half cry, the same sound he used to make every morning when Mike came home from work. Tears streamed down Mike's face as he buried his shackled hands in the thick fur, inhaling the smell of dog he had dreamed of in countless nightmares. "You remember me. You really remember me," he choked out. Rex licked at his face desperately, whining as though trying to erase every day of separation. Even the guards, hardened by years of routine, glanced away to hide their tears. It wasn't just reunion. It was proof love couldn't be chained, silenced, or forgotten.
Mike clung to Rex, as though the German Shepherd were the only thing tethering him to life. The dog's fur pressed against his cheek, warm and familiar, wiping away the chill of prison walls. His sobs broke the silence, heavy and raw. "I thought I'd never see you again," he whispered into Rex's neck. The dog responded with frantic licks, paws scrabbling against his chest, tail battering like a drumbeat of joy. Claire stood in the doorway, her hand pressed over her mouth, tears streaking freely. For a moment, the sterile holding cell transformed into a home. The kind of home they'd lost. Laughter, warmth, mornings in the park. Even the warden stepped back, her cold mask cracking, her eyes shining with reluctant humanity. 15 minutes, she had promised. 15 minutes of love before the world turned cruel again. Claire's knees buckled as she moved forward, kneeling beside Mike and Rex. Her voice trembled. "I never gave him away. No matter how many people told me to move on, he's still yours." Mike's eyes locked on hers, overflowing with gratitude and heartbreak. His hand reached out, trembling, brushing against hers across Rex's back. In that fragile touch, 5 years of stolen love poured out. Claire swallowed hard, forcing a smile through sobs. "He never forgot you, Mike. Neither did I." Rex pressed his body between them, licking both faces, tail sweeping like a metronome of hope. For the first time in years, they were a family again, even if only for a fleeting moment. And that fleeting moment cut deeper than any chain, reminding them of what had been lost and what could never be replaced.
From the corner, Warden Owens shifted uncomfortably. Her entire career had been built on protocol, a never-letting emotion cloud procedure. Yet watching the man sob into his dog's fur, she felt a crack deep in her chest. The guard at her side leaned forward. "Ma'am, it's time." Owens lifted her hand. "No, not yet." Her voice was firmer than she intended, but her eyes betrayed compassion. Mike looked up, tears glistening. "Thank you," he whispered. Owens nodded, unable to speak. She knew this mercy might cost her reputation, maybe even her position, but in this cold fortress of death, she decided to let humanity breathe. For the first time, Maggie Owens broke her own rule. She chose the heart over the handbook. And in that choice, the countdown to death paused, if only for a few more fragile minutes. The door creaked again. This time, it wasn't a guard. Edward Ed Collins stepped inside, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, his eyes hollow. Mike stiffened instantly. He knew that face, the detective who put me here. Rex growled low, sensing tension. Claire stood, her expression hardening. "Why are you here?" she demanded. Collins swallowed, guilt etched into every wrinkle of his face. "Because I think we made a mistake." Mike's breath caught. For 5 years he had screamed his innocence, ignored at every turn. Now, on the brink of death, the very man who damned him was back, not as a prosecutor of justice, but as a ghost of regret. The room shifted from reunion to confrontation. Rex pressed closer to Mike, protective, while Claire's eyes blazed. Collins cleared his throat, voice breaking. "I'm here because I don't think you killed anyone."
Collins opened a worn leather folder, hands trembling. Inside were photocopies of reports, yellowed, dust-stained. He placed them on the table. These were buried, never shown in court. Footprints that didn't match you. Gunpowder residue when the victim was stabbed. A second forensic report, ignored. Mike's head spun, his stomach twisted. You had this the whole time?" Collins' face darkened with shame. "I thought the case was solid. I let the prosecution push the easy answer. I let politics blind me, and it's haunted me every night since." Claire's fists clenched. 5 years. He's been dying in here for 5 years because you hesitated. Rex barked sharply, his growl vibrating with the room's fury. Mike's heart pounded, torn between rage and hope. The evidence wasn't just paper. It was proof, the cracks in a system that may finally admit its sin. Warden Owens seized the papers, scanning them quickly, her lips tightening. She turned to Collins. "If this is true, we can't proceed." He nodded grimly. "I've already forwarded digital copies to my contact. They're working on verification." Owens lifted the receiver on the wall phone, her tone clipped but urgent. "Governor's office, get me legal counsel, now." Guards exchanged tense looks. The air thickened. Mike clutched Rex tighter, daring to feel the smallest ember of hope. The warden met his eyes. "This doesn't clear you yet, Harlow, but it's enough to stall." She hung up, pacing. In her career, she had never fought to delay an execution, but in her gut, she knew killing a man when doubt existed was no justice at all.
The door slammed open. Assistant DA Mark Sullivan stormed inside, his suit immaculate, his voice sharp. "What is this circus? Harlock's execution is set. Nothing changes that." His eyes landed on the papers in Owen's hand. Collins stepped forward. "We have new evidence, Mark. You can't ignore this." Sullivan sneered. "Every convict claims innocence. Don't tell me you've gone soft." But his hands betrayed him, twitching as he reached for the files. His confidence faltered as he read. Claire stepped up, her voice shaking with fury. "You nearly killed an innocent man! 5 years of his life, gone!" Rex barked, startling Sullivan, forcing his gaze back to Mike. For a brief moment, the prosecutor's arrogance cracked, replaced by something deeper. Fear. Not fear of Mike, but of the truth unraveling. The foundation of his career, the victory he once boasted, was crumbling beneath him. Collins' phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then froze. "It's my contact!" He put it on speaker. A distorted voice spoke quickly. "We traced phone records. A fixer named Walton Green. Calls near the victim's penthouse the night of the murder. He was there." The room went still. Sullivan paled, realizing the case was splintering in real time. Warden Owens' jaw tightened. That's enough to halt proceedings, at least temporarily. Mike felt his heart pound, a rush of dizzying hope rising against years of despair. But with it came rage. Rage for every night spent staring at concrete walls, for every time Rex's absence crushed him. He buried his face into the dog's fur, whispering, "Maybe we're not done yet, boy." Outside the window, dawn broke stronger, casting light into the cell. For the first time, hope flickered like fire in the darkness.
By dawn, Mike was escorted in chains into a small emergency courtroom inside the prison annex. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, casting everything in sterile judgment. Claire sat in the gallery with Rex at her feet, his ears perked, body alert, sensing the storm around him. At the front, Judge Ramirez adjusted his glasses, papers stacked high before him. "This is irregular," he muttered, "but the evidence demands immediate review." Mark Sullivan, the prosecutor, stood tall, jaw clenched. Collins shifted nervously beside the defense attorney. Mike sat quietly, head bowed, the weight of 5 years pressing on his shoulders. Yet beneath the crushing silence, Rex's steady presence kept him tethered. For the first time, Mike wasn't completely alone. As the gavel struck to begin, the question loomed like a thundercloud. Would this room save him or bury him forever? The courtroom erupted with voices. Sullivan argued furiously, "Your Honor, this is nothing but a desperate stunt." Collins slammed the evidence down, his voice shaking. "This report was buried. Forensics proves there was a second suspect. Phone records connect Walton Green to the scene." Ramirez narrowed his eyes. "Mr. Sullivan, explain why this was not disclosed at trial." The prosecutor stammered, flipping through the documents, his confidence evaporating. Claire's fists clenched, whispering, "Fight, Mike, just fight a little longer." Rex let out a soft whine, his paw pressed against Mike's boot, as if lending him strength. For 5 years, Mike's voice had been drowned out, but here, now, the silence was breaking. The clash of truths shook the walls of ironwood. Sullivan's pride cracked, replaced by a terrifying reality. His entire conviction was on the verge of collapse.
Judge Ramirez slammed the gavel. "Enough. Given the buried evidence and new testimony, I am granting a 48-hour stay of execution." The courtroom gasped. Sullivan stiffened, his face pale. Claire clutched her chest, tears of relief spilling. Mike closed his eyes, the words sinking into his soul like sunlight through fog. 48 hours. Not freedom, not yet, but not death either. Rex barked sharply, tail thumping, as though he understood. The gavel echoed one more time. "Further investigation will proceed immediately. This man does not die today." Guards stepped forward to escort Mike back to holding. But for once, their grip didn't feel like a death sentence. Mike reached down, brushing Rex's fur with shackled hands. The German shepherd pressed close, whining in joy. Against every odd, hope wasn't dead. The system had paused, and that pause felt like the first breath of life in years. Back in the holding cell, Mike sat with his head in his hands. Relief should have washed over him, but instead rage clawed at his chest. 5 years. 5 years wasted in this tomb, he whispered. His breath hitched, body trembling. Rex pressed against his legs, whining softly, eyes full of loyalty. Claire reached through the bars, her hand finding his. "We have a chance now. Don't let the anger eat you." But Mike's tears weren't just anger, they were grief. He had missed birthdays, sunsets, walks in the park. He had lost pieces of himself that could never be returned. "They stole my life," he choked. Rex licked his hand, grounding him. Love was still there, alive and warm. Yet beneath it all lingered a darker truth. Freedom would not erase the scars of injustice.
Collins returned late that night, his face grim. He spread out more files on the table. Walton Green, he said, ex-cop turned fixer, known for cleaning up dirty jobs for powerful men. Paid off to ensure your conviction stuck, Mike. Claire's eyes widened. Paid off? By who? Collins shook his head. That's the part we don't know yet, but he was there. Witnesses place him near the penthouse. He made the call that night. The room chilled. Rex growled low, sensing the unease in everyone's voices. Mike clenched his fists, fury burning hot. The enemy wasn't faceless anymore. It had a name, a man still out there, free. As the walls of ironwood closed in, one thought burned inside Mike's heart. Freedom wouldn't just mean life. It would mean facing the man who stole it from him. The next day, the gavel struck again. Judge Ramirez's voice carried like thunder. The conviction is vacated. Michael Harlow is free. The words cracked through the courtroom like lightning. Gasps filled the air. Claire burst into tears, clutching Rex to her chest. Mike froze, disbelieving, before the guard stepped forward, not to bind him, but to remove his shackles. The sound of the cuffs falling echoed like music. His wrists, scarred from years of steel, were suddenly light. He stood slowly, legs trembling, sunlight spilling through the windows onto his face. He turned to Claire, who whispered through sobs, "You're coming home." Rex lunged forward, paws on Mike's chest, tail whipping in wild celebration. For the first time in years, Mike smiled. After years of silence, the impossible had happened. He wasn't prisoner 4812 anymore. He was Michael Harlow, free man.
The courthouse steps were chaos. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Protesters screamed on both sides. But in the middle of the storm, Mike saw only two faces, Claire and Rex bounding toward him. He dropped to his knees as the German Shepherd leapt into his arms, nearly knocking him over. Mike laughed through tears, pressing his face into the dog's fur. "We did it, boy! We're together again!" Claire wrapped her arms around both of them, sobbing uncontrollably. Around them, microphones were thrust forward. Questions screamed. But none of it mattered. In that moment, the world disappeared. To the cameras, it was a scandal, a shocking reversal of justice. To Mike, it was salvation. For the first time in 5 years, he walked not as a prisoner, but as a man stepping back into life, with Rex and Claire at his side. At Claire's small house, Mike stood in the doorway, staring at the boxes, the faded photographs, the dust of years gone by. Life had moved on without him. He sank into the couch, Rex curling instantly at his feet, his warm presence grounding him. Claire sat beside him, her hand sliding into his. "I kept everything," she whispered. Mike glanced at the unopened wedding invitations tucked into a box on the shelf. His chest ached. "It doesn't feel real," he admitted. "Freedom, it feels like a dream awake from." Claire leaned into him, her tears wetting his shirt. Rex lifted his head, ears flicking at their voices, pressing closer. Bittersweet silence filled the room. Home wasn't the same, but it was theirs again. And for the first time, Mike allowed himself to believe he could begin again.
Days later, Mike stood at Creekside Park with Claire, Rex tugging happily at his leash. The morning sun painted the grass golden, the breeze carrying laughter of families nearby. For a moment, Mike just closed his eyes, letting the warmth soak into his skin. It was freedom in its purest form. No walls, no guards, just sky. Claire squeezed his hand. "We'll take it one day at a time." Rex barked joyfully, tail wagging as if echoing the promise. Mike smiled, crouching to rub the dog's ears. "One day at a time," he repeated. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel dangerous. It felt alive, breathing with every heartbeat, every step, every sunrise. He wasn't whole yet, but with Claire and Rex, maybe he could be again. The evening was calm, the house filled with quiet. Mike sat at the table, scrolling through a new phone Claire had bought him. A message buzzed across the screen. Unknown number. His stomach tightened as he read the words. You're free, but not safe. They still want silence. His hand trembled. Claire glanced at him. What is it? Mike forced a smile, pocketing the phone. Nothing, just spam. But his eyes betrayed the storm inside. Rex lifted his head from the rug, ears pricked, sensing unease. Outside, a car slowed near the house, then rolled on into the night. The shadows pressed heavy against the windows. Freedom wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Mike reached down, resting his hand on Rex's head, whispering, "Whatever's coming, we face it together." The screen faded to black.